don't worry about it until it happens. I'm an old movie guy, and that phrase from The Match King in 1932 was followed up with, and then I'll take care of it. So between that phrase and let me know if you need anything is how I lived my life. Now, where I'm at today is entirely different from where I was a year ago. I'm with the same agency as I was, but I'm in a different place. The funny part about all this is about a year ago, I was supposed to be starting a new job. And I learned a lot that really kind of surprised me because I didn't come from a law enforcement family. Whenever I got into law enforcement, I got this second family. Now, I'd heard all about this because I knew law enforcement officers. And so I got this second family, and it was really exciting for me. Beneficially, on my part, I was able to be trained by some of the best officers that I've ever met who taught me about commitment, work really hard for what you've got, and never take the easy way. Unfortunately, that also taught me some bad habits, and those bad habits can lead to burnout. And whenever you are dealing with that situation, it's really, really challenging to not have your ego and your pride step in. Now, that phrase, don't worry about it until it happens and then I'll take care of it, is where I started drifting towards. And fortunately for me, I had those same senior officers, those mentors, pull me to the side and squash my ego really, really fast. I think some of us have had that benefit that's extremely uncomfortable. But the other half of it is I didn't realize it completely, and so it was an outward display, but I still had that internal display or those inward issues. And so for me, this may come as a surprise, but I'm kind of a control freak. I know no cop ever anywhere has ever been a control freak. But whenever I look at this stuff, I asked myself the question of the Emerson hour. And for me, if I had to answer that question of what has become more clear, in one word, it would be acceptance. And for me, as I'm going through this, working through this process, there were several things I had to come to accept. Number one is I don't control everything. And we all, as a matter of fact, I have every officer I've ever trained. You control the things you can control, and the things you can't control, you don't worry about. It's great advice. I just should have followed it. There's something about lying in a hospital bed, seeing your career goals walk away from you, that reinforces you're not in control of anything. Number two, you can't be everything, everybody's everything. Again, my goal was I want to be the best, I want to be the most helpful, always give, never take. And I'll tell you, my wife was doing the same thing with her teaching career at the time, and fortunately we didn't have any children, so the damage while it was there was minimal. But I committed. The reason I existed was for my agency. And again, the crew that I worked with was a really good crew. But I didn't understand that I couldn't be everybody's everything. And I had to come to terms and accept this. Next, plans change. Accept this. And in case I haven't mentioned, plans change. I've got my calendar that I live by, and I think some of you have probably heard me say before, I lived by my calendar to the point where I had to put family time on my calendar to make sure it happened. Now that's dangerous. I know I've heard people say it's good, say it's bad, but I'll tell you right now it's very, very dangerous, because if you have to put family time on that calendar, then the things you're spending your time on aren't good for you. And even if that's spending time with your crew and being tight and close-knit in that second family, they're your second family. They should care about you just as much and know that you need to be with your family sometimes. Number three, or number four, I guess, but you also, friends do want to help, and you need to accept this. And it was really, really challenging for me. As I said, about 6 months ago, I'm laying in a hospital watching my career goals walk away from me. And I talked to the wife, and we decided it was time for plans to change. I was kind of coming to terms with that fact. So I get the good pleasure of walking into my boss that has been one of my oldest law enforcement friends and saying, hey, remember that letter of resignation? I'm going to need that back. And it was the second most awkward conversation. The first was when I asked the sheriff that I ran against if I could have a job, which fortunately they both said yes, so I'm still employed. That's great. But while I'm working through this, my wife presents me with a backpack full of cards from my coworkers. And I had told my sheriff and one other guy that I work with, I hadn't even told my undersheriff what was going on in my life. And they took, my wife knew what I needed without me even knowing. And as I'm going through these cards from these guys that I've worked with, some of whom I've trained, the most sincere cards are from those guys that I've trained. And it really just kind of hit home. So a few more days go by, and the texts and the phone calls start coming in. And it's from guys that have long since left law enforcement. They were retired, they've gone on to do other things, either enjoy retirement or just keep on keeping on. And every one of them said my phrase, let me know if you need anything. And that's when it hit me that this room right here, right now, with all of us in it, that's why it's so important, is relationships. Because if you are not building those relationships, good, strong foundations, you're letting so much pass you by where you could get the help that you need from the people that care about you. And so as you're going through this, you know, I'm not saying ILEETA should become a cult, although it may already be. But what I've come to realize is God does put people in our lives. And we need to take these opportunities and not let them pass us up. Now, every year that I've been here, I've heard, make sure you network, make sure you talk to people, make sure you make new relationships, and no Facebook friends that don't count. And I've taken that, and every year I've learned something new, and I've made a new relationship that I didn't even see coming down the line. And that's why, if I sum it all up, the takeaway from this whole thing is, in acceptance lies peace. And this is a quote from Amy Carmichael back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But the philosophy is this: we're peace officers. We generally look at that responsibility as keeping the peace and bringing peace to other people. But we can't bring that peace if we don't have true peace. And so coming to terms with those things that are our challenges, and getting the help that we need, and recognizing that we don't run everything, and all of those issues combined, that's what has become clearer to me, is acceptance. Thank you.